What's up, guys? Bang, bang. One of the questions I've been getting recently is whether the Ether ETF is good for Bitcoin or not. On one hand, it could be a distraction. On the other hand, all boats could rise together. Thankfully, I am here to answer your question. Now, I wrote about this about 5 years ago in something called the token density theory. Now, forget about crypto for a second. It's much better to explain it with a regular business. Let's call it restaurants. If you sit at an intersection in a restaurant, let's say in a small town somewhere in America, and there's one single restaurant there, some of the people who live nearby, they come to the restaurant every once in a while. And if all of a sudden across the street, a second restaurant gets built, a lot of people would say, wait a minute, that's competition. That's bad for business in the original restaurant. You went from one restaurant at that intersection to now two. But let's say that a third and a fourth restaurant all get built at that same intersection. Many people would believe that that's actually bad for the first business. But what studies show is that the density at that intersection of having more than one restaurant leads to all of the restaurants seeing more foot traffic and more revenue. So what happens is that people then begin to understand that this is the restaurant intersection. If I'm hungry, let's just go down there and we'll figure out where we're going to eat. That's the beauty of building density in a certain area all around the same exact type of business. Now, let's go back to the crypto world. That's exactly what we're seeing here. When Bitcoin got approved with the ETF, that was great. We saw over $13 billion of assets flow into these ETFs. And of course, Wall Street, they love Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up a lot compared to most of the assets that they have in their portfolio over a long period of time. And they now have a way to make money. They can have an ETF, they can charge fees, and it's bringing even more customers to them. So it's a great thing for Wall Street. But when the Ether ETF gets approved, I actually don't think that Ether's ETF is going to be a distraction to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's story is very clear. People know exactly why you buy it. It's a store of value, it protects your purchasing power, and it's this decentralized asset that's competing against gold. No other crypto asset is really trying to beat Bitcoin. Instead, all of the other crypto assets are competing from a technology standpoint. They're all trying to be smart contract platforms or various other types of platforms. And so if you think about in the legacy world, Bitcoin is akin to gold, and then Ethereum, Solana, and many other coins, those are more like Facebook, Google, Apple, etc. Now, the reason why this becomes really interesting is because what we are watching is the legitimization of the crypto industry.
Today's episode is brought to you by Propy. Imagine a world where you could buy and sell your home, wallet to wallet. With PropyKeys, you can mint your home address and upgrade it to a real-world asset. This not only protects your home's title from fraud, but when you are ready to move, you can sell it through an NFT auction as well as through the traditional way. There's optionality here. PropyKeys is part of the Propy ecosystem. Their mission is to make home ownership more efficient, affordable, and user-friendly. PropyKeys is a fun entry point to placing title on the blockchain. Now, anyone can start their on-chain journey by minting home addresses via PropyKeys and staking them for profit until they are ready to sell their home. Visit PropyKeys.com to learn more. Again, that's PropyKeys.com to learn more.
Wall Street loves Bitcoin. Wall Street's going to love Ether. Wall Street's going to love Solana and everything else because now they see activity coming in. They understand that if we can get these young investors to go and start buying these assets, we establish a relationship with them. And then we're going to go right back to all of our existing clients. And we're going to say, hey, we now have these new assets that seem to perform better than our traditional assets. Would you like to buy some? And that's what I think you're going to see when the Ether ETF gets approved. Now, I don't think the Ether ETF is going to get more inflows than the Bitcoin ETF got because, again, Bitcoin's story is unique. It's clear. It's different. It's something that people can wrap their heads around very easily. But I do think that the Ether ETFs are going to see inflows. And I think that you're going to continue to see people start to pick which of the technology platforms do they want to bet on. No different than what they do in the legacy world when they're trying to pick stocks or try to figure out which sectors are going to outperform others. That's what we're going to see when it's Ether, Solana, and many other ETFs. But ultimately, we are going to see more capital flow into the overall crypto ecosystem on Wall Street. Because now what you're seeing is not only are investors interested in it, not only are the regulators going to approve this stuff, but also the banks are getting up to speed. You have people inside these organizations that understand the assets, they understand the market, they understand portfolio theory, and they're going out and their sales teams are going to start talking to their clients. They want more people allocating more dollars to these assets, and therefore that's what they're going to get. Wall Street is incredibly good at distribution. They are way better at it than the crypto industry. And I think that we're going to continue to see capital flow into all of these assets. But don't get confused. Don't believe that because there's going to be an Ether ETF that it is going to hurt Bitcoin. I actually think Bitcoin is going to help Ether and Ether is going to help Bitcoin. Same with every other ETF that gets approved. And so ultimately, we're on the same team. There's a lot of people that are tribal or maximals in the crypto ecosystem. But you have to understand that every single one of these assets is a net positive in terms of marketing, awareness, capital flows, user acquisition, and continuing to see this asset class seared into the brains of investors. There's this thing called the Lindy effect. The longer something exists, the more likely it is to persist in the future. Well, many of the assets that people are buying, the S&P, QQQ, etc., they've been around for a while. Investors have confidence that they're going to be around in the future. What we are going to see is over the coming years and maybe even decades, that the longer these assets have been in the market, the more people have held them, the more comfortable folks are going to get. There's a familiarity that comes with holding these assets. And so the banks will get more comfortable, the investors will get more comfortable, the regulators will get more comfortable. And so to see more assets flow should not be shocking. And I also don't think seeing many more assets being approved for ETFs over time is going to be shocking either. So now we understand Wall Street can make money. We understand regulators are going to approve this stuff. And they are not competitive with each other. Instead, all boats will rise together. And that's exactly what you should want. You should want to play a game where you can win when other people are successful. Playing a zero-sum game where you have to win at the expense of somebody else or at the expense of another asset is not a game that's usually worth playing. And so it's very good to see that that token density theory, that same thing like the restaurant density at that intersection, the more tokens we have approved in the regulated market, the better it will be for Bitcoin and the better it will be for the overall crypto industry.